Welcome back to the Morning Blend. Well, whether you're a morning person or a night person, it's important that you get enough sleep, especially for kids. But why? Dr. Melissa Westendorf is a clinical psychologist and co-founder of the Technology Wellness Center. In just a few minutes, we're going to have tips to help you and your kids get a better night's sleep. Great to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
What I was going to say is first, though, we're going to start with sort of like what's recommended and what's best at different age groups, because sleep is so important.
It's really important, especially for kids when they're learning. It's best for them to, do their studying and get a good night's sleep, because that's when your brain integrates everything you've learned throughout the day, and then you have it for the next day. And so it's crucial for our students who are learning.
And I think a lot of parents are going to say, okay, that sounds great. But the thing is, especially as kids get older, it seems like they're just automatically wired to go to bed later. But a lot of times they'll go, especially if they're in high school, some high schools start really early.
Right. I mean, biologically, adolescents are wired to go to bed later or to go to sleep later. And so when we're getting them up at 6 a.m. in the morning, it's like waking you and I up at 4 a.m. in the morning. And so think about doing that every single morning, yet they're going. They're wired differently. It's very, very painful.
Yeah, it is. And I think we have to sort of respect that and try to manage it. So how much sleep should kids get? Let's start with younger kids between the ages of 6 and 12 years old.
Right. So there we're looking at, 9 to 12 hours. I know that's a big range because, you have 6-year-olds, but if you can push it as up into that range as much as possible, because those kids just need that much sleep to restore everything in their bodies.
Ages 13 to 18, so this is really like maybe 8th grade or so through high school and maybe even the beginning of college. You say 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
My guess is that a lot of people are going to say with teenagers, there's no way they're getting 10 hours of sleep a night.
I know, it is really, really hard. And so hopefully if there's just a couple of these tips that you can use to increase it a little bit, it's just going to work wonders for your kids.
And then what about as kids, like we talked with kids 6 to 8, the studies show that 6 out of 10 are not getting enough sleep, right? So studies are showing that with these recommendations, the majority of kids are not getting the sleep that they need.
Right. The CDC did this very large study. It's based on 2015 data, but they, over across the states, urban schools, rural schools, all types of schools, public and private, thousands of kids, and 60% of kids in middle school essentially are not getting enough sleep, and 70% of high schoolers are not getting enough sleep.
And a lot of parents are going to say they're not surprised. So lack of sleep is associated with what kinds of problems?
Right. So there's a range of problems. There's medical problems. You have obesity, which then is associated with diabetes. So sleep is now associated with increased risk for diabetes. You have increased mental health problems. I know that I've worked with kids who are on technology too late and they don't get enough sleep. It can lead to depression, and then that has led into some suicidal ideation. That's extreme, but it does lead to mental health difficulties because you need your sleep. That fatigue, it just wears on your mental health.
There's so much anxiety too, I think, among school-aged children. Does a lack of sleep contribute to anxiety as well?
Yeah, it can be a vicious circle because maybe they're anxious about how well they're doing in school or all of the activities that they're involved in, which impedes their sleep. And then that leads to more anxiety the next day because they're fatigued.
And probably academic performance is affected.
Right, absolutely. Concentration, attention, academic performance. The other thing we have to think about are injuries. Actually, injuries are related to lack of sleep as well. And I want you to think about those kids who are driving to school now too, your 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are driving, and they're at increased risk for accidents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and car accidents, I think it's in a certain window, are the #1 killer of kids. I think it's like 15 to 20. It's somewhere around that.
Right.
Tips for electronic issues, because clearly technology is contributing to a lack of sleep. You say no screens in the bedrooms after a certain time. This is a huge transition in my house, not one that my kids are a fan of. But once you kind of set up the rule, they're sort of like locked into it now. There's a charger away from their bedrooms.
Right.
They plug their phone in around 9:30, 10, and then they don't think about it. And then I say I'm the phone fairy. So when I get up in the morning, I go, because they want it for their alarms.
Yes.
They've tried other alarms.
Yes.
but I drop off their phone when I wake up into their room so it wakes them up. I don't know if that's a good idea, but.
No, I mean, I think it's managing the situation that you have. You're giving a little for them, but you're also receiving from them so that you can help ensure that they get good sleep. And so getting those screens out of the bedrooms, absolutely no television. I mean, study after study shows those kids get less sleep if they have electronics in their room. So cutting it off out of the bedroom at a certain time, but then cutting it off just altogether at a certain time.
So no TVs, no computers in the bedrooms.
Right, right.
And you say no screens after a certain time. So it's important to have, you say paper homework last. So in other words, if they need to be using a laptop, computer, their phones even for homework, do that earlier and then push the paper homework off closer to bedtime.
Right, that's what I do. I know we don't have a ton of paper homework anymore, but math might still be on the paper, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would push that off to the last. At least you're trying to incorporate some of the tips about cutting off the electronics.
Another thing too is I feel like with English class, my kids, they still read actual books. It's not on Kindles, so real books. But I think reading is a good one, as long as they're not too tired, to put that last too, if they're reading a book. Right. Class.
Absolutely.
What about nap time? Should they nap?
Well, so here's the thing. When they're looking at studies, those hours I gave you earlier, it's in a 24-hour period. You know, it wasn't until the Industrial Revolution that we compacted all our sleep into one time frame. People used to sleep, get up, and then sleep again. So that's okay. If your kid comes home, he's exhausted, let them take a nap. That's all right. And then they get up, they're a little more refreshed to maybe do their homework. They'll go back to sleep when they should at the right time.
I like that. And you say campaign for schools for later start times. And I will say, I was telling you during the commercial break, our high school went from 7:45 a.m. start to 8:15 a.m. It's our first year of it, but I feel like my kids are in a better mood in the morning, able to get up easier on their own, and I'm kind of thinking they're not going to be sick as often.
Right, and study after study shows that this helps. And so if schools can get on board and help with this, it's not just electronics, it's also activities. But if they can get on board, I think it improves school performance, it decreases injuries. There's just so many benefits, and you can still put in all the teaching you need into the day.
Right, I love it. Good information. Thank you so much. And you can go to themorningblend.com to find out more about the technology wellness.